The rain had just stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the neon signs of downtown. Ethan wiped his grease-stained hands on a rag, the smell of motor oil clinging stubbornly to his skin. He had just finished patching up an old pickup truck, a job that barely paid enough to cover groceries for the week, but it was honest work, and he needed every dollar for his daughter, Lily. "Daddy, can we get ice cream now?" Lily's small voice rang with excitement, her hand tugging at his sleeve. Ethan smiled, exhaustion melting into warmth. "Of course, sweetheart. You've been patient all day." The two of them walked into the sleek, brightly lit ice cream parlor just across from Ethan's little workshop. The place was buzzing with business people in tailored suits, their conversations dripping with confidence and wealth. Ethan felt the usual pinch of awkwardness. His faded work shirt, scuffed boots, and the smell of the garage made him stick out like an oil stain on a white tablecloth. But Lily didn't care. To her, he wasn't just a mechanic. He was her hero. She picked her favorite strawberry swirl with rainbow sprinkles and giggled when her father pretended to steal a bite. They were laughing, lost in their little world, when the door swung open. A woman in a sharp navy suit strode in, her presence commanding the room without a word. Perfectly styled hair, expensive jewelry, and the kind of confidence that came from knowing the world bent to her will. This was Victoria Hale, CEO of Hale Motors, a luxury car empire known throughout the city. Ethan knew her face, everyone did. She was the kind of person who showed up on magazine covers, delivering lectures about success and efficiency. But what most people didn't know was that behind those headlines, she carried an infamous reputation for being cold, ruthless, and merciless in her judgments. Victoria stepped up to the counter, but her sharp eyes flicked over to Ethan and Lily. And then, she wrinkled her nose. "Goodness," she said loudly, her voice slicing through the cheerful chatter. "Do they really let anyone in here? The smell of motor oil doesn't exactly mix with vanilla and sprinkles." The room fell quiet. Ethan froze, his hand tightening on the cone he was holding. He wanted to ignore it, to shield Lily from the sting of cruel words, but Victoria wasn't finished. She tilted her head, smirking at Ethan's oil-stained shirt. "What do you even do? Fix junk cars all day? People like you're just waste in the system. Replaceable. Forgettable." Ethan's jaw clenched. His pride screamed at him to fight back, but then he felt Lily's little hand slip into his. She looked up at him with wide, confused eyes. She didn't understand cruelty yet. And he refused to let her first lesson in it come from his anger. So he steadied himself, forcing his voice calm. "I'm a mechanic," he said simply. "And I work hard to give my daughter a good life. That may not mean much to you, but it means everything to me." Victoria let out a laugh, sharp and dismissive. "Pathetic. Dream smaller, mechanic. You'll never be more than grease under someone's fingernails." The clerk behind the counter looked uncomfortable, the customers averted their eyes, but no one spoke up. Silence swallowed the moment. Ethan crouched down and handed Lily the cone, whispering gently, "Enjoy your ice cream, sweetheart." As they turned to leave, Victoria's voice followed them, dripping with scorn. "People like you'll never matter." The words burned like acid, but Ethan walked out without looking back. That night, long after Lily had fallen asleep in their tiny apartment, Ethan sat at the worn kitchen table. Bills were spread out in front of him, rent overdue, utilities piling up, and Lily's school fundraiser letter pinned under his calloused hand. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion pressing down like a weight. He could still hear Victoria's voice echoing in his head, "You're waste. Replaceable. Forgettable." But then, from the next room, he heard Lily's soft breathing, steady and innocent. He closed his eyes and reminded himself, she's why I fight. She's why none of this is waste. The next morning, Ethan was back at his garage, a run-down corner shop with a flickering sign and tools held together with duct tape and prayers. Customers trickled in, most of them working folks just trying to keep their old cars alive. Ethan never turned anyone away. Sometimes he charged half, sometimes nothing at all if he knew they were struggling. "Ethan, you're too soft," his neighbor Maria told him once as he replaced her brake pads for free. "You'll go broke like this." But Ethan just smiled. "Maybe. But I can't charge a mother more than she has. People aren't waste, Maria. They deserve a break once in a while." It was a simple philosophy, one Ethan lived by. People weren't disposable. Everyone mattered. What he didn't know was that very soon, life would test that belief in a way he never imagined, when the same woman who mocked him would find her life in his hands. Victoria Hale lived in a world where speed and efficiency weren't just goals, they were requirements. Her penthouse overlooked the city like a throne room, glass walls giving her a view of the empire she had built. Every morning she woke at 5, worked out with a personal trainer, and stepped into her chauffeured car by 6. Meetings, calls, contracts, it was a blur of precision and control. And yet, when the doors of her penthouse closed at night, silence pressed in. She told herself it didn't matter. That she had chosen this life. That people were distractions, weaknesses, wastes of time. She remembered the mechanic's face, the look in his eyes when she called him waste. It wasn't the first time she had broken someone down with words, but something about his calmness unsettled her. Most people either lashed out or shrank back. He had simply stood there, holding his daughter, refusing to let her venom define him. Still, she brushed it off. He was nobody. She was somebody. End of story. At least, that's what she thought. 2 weeks later, Victoria was on her way to a crucial investor dinner. She hated being late, and the traffic snarls on the highway gnawed at her patience. She dismissed her driver, insisting she could make up the time by taking a back road herself in her sleek black sedan. The night was humid, the air heavy. She pressed harder on the accelerator, eyes fixed on the GPS. And then the car sputtered. Coughed. Died. She slammed the steering wheel. No, not tonight. She tried the ignition again. Nothing. Smoke hissed from under the hood. Victoria swore under her breath, heels clicking angrily as she stepped out onto the cracked pavement of an old roadside strip. Fate has a cruel sense of humor. Because right across the street, under the flickering sign of a tiny garage, stood Ethan. Grease on his shirt, a wrench in hand, head bent under the hood of a customer's car. For a moment, Victoria considered calling for a tow truck. Anyone but him. But as the smoke thickened, frustration forced her pride aside. She marched over. "You," she said sharply. "Mechanic." Ethan looked up, surprised. His eyes met hers, and he straightened slowly. "CEO," he said evenly. The word carried no sarcasm, no malice, just quiet acknowledgement. That almost stung worse than an insult. "My car broke down," she announced, gesturing with annoyance. "I need it fixed. Now. I'll pay double." Ethan wiped his hands on a rag. "Money isn't the issue. But respect that's worth more than double." Her jaw tightened. "Are you going to fix it or not?" Ethan studied her for a long moment. He could have turned her away. He wanted to, if he was honest. But then he thought of Lily. What would he teach her if he let bitterness dictate his actions? So he nodded. Pop the hood. The work was messy. Luxury cars weren't made for roadside repairs, but Ethan had skill and patience. Victoria stood off to the side, arms crossed, her phone buzzing with missed calls from impatient investors. As he worked, Ethan spoke quietly. You know, most people don't choose their struggles. Some of us are just trying to keep food on the table. Doesn't he make us less? Victoria didn't answer. She kept her eyes on the dark horizon, refusing to admit that his words pricked something deep inside. After half an hour, the engine sputtered back to life. Ethan closed the hood, handing her the keys. You're good to go. She hesitated, pulling out her wallet. How much? He shook his head. No charge. She frowned. I can't just. You can, Ethan interrupted gently. Consider it a reminder. People aren't waste. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Victoria muttered, almost defensive, You think you've proven something? Ethan gave a small, tired smile. Not to you. To myself. Victoria got into her car without another word, the engine purring smoothly as she drove off into the night, but as the lights faded, so did her certainty. The mechanic's words stayed with her, echoing louder than she wanted to admit. And fate wasn't done with them yet. Because the next time their paths crossed, there would be no broken car, only broken glass, gunfire, and the brutal truth of life and death. It was late on a Thursday evening when Victoria found herself pulling into a quiet roadside diner on the outskirts of the city. The meeting she had rushed to 2 weeks earlier had gone fine, but since then, she couldn't shake the mechanic's words. They haunted her in ways she didn't understand. She hadn't told anyone, but she started driving herself more often, slipping away from the chauffeured cars and endless bodyguards. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe it was curiosity, but part of her wanted to prove she wasn't afraid of being ordinary. The diner smelled of coffee and fried onions, its neon sign buzzing faintly. A handful of truckers sat hunched over their meals. Victoriously,